There is a sequence of events that will unfold inside your body in the minutes and hours after a nuclear detonation. It will feel like survival instinct. It will feel like adrenaline doing its job. It will feel, in the most immediate and visceral sense, like your biology is on your side. It is not. What you will experience is a precisely orchestrated cascade of physiological responses that evolved over millions of years to handle predators, physical confrontation, and short-term danger. None of it was calibrated for nuclear events, and every single phase of it will attempt to walk you directly into the mechanisms that will kill you. This is not a metaphor. This is endocrinology, neuroscience, and applied physics operating simultaneously on a body that has no evolutionary context for what is happening to it. Your glands will fire, your pupils will dilate, your heart rate will spike, and your higher cognitive function, the part of your brain capable of reading a rule of sevens chart or calculating blast wave propagation, will be chemically suppressed by the very hormones your body produces to save you. You will feel more alive than you have ever felt. You will be making the worst decisions of your life, and you will be completely convinced that you are doing the right thing. Let's walk through exactly how this kills you. The first thing that happens is not the blast. The first thing that happens is the flash. A nuclear detonation produces a thermal pulse, a burst of electromagnetic radiation traveling at the speed of light, arriving before the sound, before the pressure wave, before any sensory warning your body can process and act on. If you are within the relevant range and facing the detonation, your retinas will receive a dose of light energy sufficient to cause flash blindness, temporary in low-light conditions, potentially permanent in bright daylight when your pupils are dilated. This is your first betrayal. Your visual system, the primary sense your brain uses to construct situational awareness, is taken offline in the first fraction of a second. You are now navigating the most dangerous environment you will ever encounter with degraded or absent vision, elevated heart rate, and a neurological system about to be flooded with stress hormones. The adrenaline arrives within seconds. Epinephrine floods your bloodstream, and the effects are immediate and comprehensive. Heart rate increases. Blood is shunted away from the digestive system and toward large muscle groups. Bronchioles dilate to increase oxygen intake. Pain sensitivity drops. And the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational planning, consequence evaluation, and long-term decision-making, is effectively deprioritized by the neurochemical environment your body has created. This is the mechanism that will cause you to run toward the window, to go outside, to look for family members in the open, to ignore the rule of sevens, because 14 hours in a shelter feels less survivable than the street outside, which is incorrect, and which your adrenaline-compromised prefrontal cortex is not equipped to challenge. The 15-minute window after detonation is the most consequential interval in your survival timeline. It is also the interval during which your body is most comprehensively chemically compromised. Every correct action in those 15 minutes requires you to override your instinct. Move away from windows, your body wants to look. Get to an interior room, your body wants to run outside and assess. Stay low and still, your body wants to move, to act, to do something. The fight-or-flight response was not designed for threats that are invisible, odorless, and propagate at the speed of sound. It was designed for threats you can see and either fight or outrun. You cannot outrun a blast wave. You cannot fight fallout. And your body does not know this. If you find this channel useful, and if you are still watching, your prefrontal cortex is apparently still online. The subscribe button is below. Hit it now, while your higher cognitive function is operational. Because in the scenario this channel prepares you for, it may not be available when you need it most. Now, the cortisol phase. After the initial adrenaline spike, your body begins producing cortisol, the sustained stress hormone. Where adrenaline is the sprint, cortisol is the marathon. And cortisol has effects on cognition that are directly lethal in a nuclear survival context. Sustained high cortisol levels impair memory consolidation, reduce the ability to process complex multi-step information, increase cognitive rigidity, the tendency to repeat familiar behaviors even when they are not working, and progressively degrade the quality of decision-making over hours. This is the phase during which people make the shelter mistake. They have been inside for 8 hours. They are uncomfortable. Their cortisol-soaked brain is telling them that the familiar behavior, going outside, moving, doing something, is the correct behavior. Their Geiger counter says otherwise. Their cortisol wins. This is also the phase in which the carbon monoxide threat becomes lethal. A sealed shelter with a candle or a small combustion source accumulates CO slowly. In the first hour, the concentration is negligible. By hour 4, in a small, poorly ventilated space, it is approaching the threshold of physiological effect. Mild CO poisoning presents as headache, fatigue, and mild confusion, symptoms that are indistinguishable to a cortisol-compromised brain from stress and exhaustion. The person sealing their shelter correctly, sitting in the dark, breathing carbon monoxide at sublethal concentrations, believes they are simply tired. They are not simply tired. They are being chemically prepared to make the decision to open the door. Their body is producing a reason to leave. The CO is helping. The iodine tablet enters this picture as a psychological variable, not a medical one. Potassium iodide protects the thyroid gland from radioactive iodine 131, specifically and exclusively. It does not protect against cesium 137, which distributes through muscle tissue. It does not protect against strontium 90, which accumulates in bone. It does not reduce external gamma exposure by a single millisievert. What it does, with remarkable consistency, is trigger a psychological state researchers call protective action completion, the sensation that a critical survival task has been performed. In a cortisol-flooded brain already seeking behavioral shortcuts, the iodine tablet is a neurological off-switch for vigilance. The threat has been addressed. The brain begins negotiating for return to normalcy. The door begins to look like an option. The rule of sevens is not complicated mathematics. It is a simple exponential decay curve that tells you radiation intensity drops by a factor of 10 for every 7-fold increase in time elapsed since detonation. 1 hour becomes 7, becomes 49, becomes 343. The physics is consistent and merciless. The problem is not understanding the rule. The problem is that between hours 8 and 24, the most critical shelter period, your body has been running on adrenaline and cortisol for long enough that your cognitive capacity to hold a multi-step logical framework in mind and act on it against the screaming biological imperative to move is genuinely, measurably impaired. Studies on sustained stress and cognitive function do not produce comforting conclusions. Your brain at hour 16 of high-stress confinement is not the brain that understood the rule of sevens when it was calm. It is a degraded instrument making decisions with incomplete information and compromised processing, and it is supremely confident that it knows what it is doing. The Leningrad siege documented this over 872 days. The Fukushima evacuation documented it over hours. In both cases, the pattern was identical. People with access to correct information made incorrect decisions because their neurobiological state made the correct decision feel wrong. Staying still feels like dying. Moving feels like surviving. The radiation does not care how it feels. The blast wave has already passed. The fallout is already on the ground. The only variable left in your survival equation is whether your prefrontal cortex can reassert control over a body that is chemically convinced it knows better. Physics does not issue a second warning. It does not account for adrenaline.